Nigeria's central bank is worried about, or rather focused about boosting dollar supply on the currency market, not necessarily valuation of the naira, according to Director of Monetary Policy Hassan Mahmood at a virtual investor conference. He said the level of the naira is expected to adjust based on demand, but that market failures have made the bank adopt a managed float regime. He also said the spot rate is the reference rate and that he expects a convergence of Nigeria's several exchange rates, a gap which exists 4.11 on the official rate at about 4.25, 4.30 on the parallel market. We have, of course, Michael Oguremi, who is a macroeconomist and fixed income analyst at Chapel Hill Denham, joining us right now. Michael, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Rozos.
Does FX supply lie in the hands of the Central Bank of Nigeria?
Well, I would think so. If you look at between January 2020 and March 2021, about $55 billion was supplied to the FX market, right? And when you look at the contribution of the CBN, to that volume, it's about 94%. So it simply tells the story that the CBN is a major player as far as supply of FX in the economy is concerned. The other parts will be the autonomous sources. But the issue we have with autonomous sources is the fact that on a net basis, they don't have a positive value. And so what that simply means is that you have, quite a lot of outflows coming from the autonomous sources, but this does not completely take up the entire inflow that they get. So the point is that, quite right, autonomous sources get, quite a lot of dollar inflow in form of remittances, in form of export earnings and all of that, but not everything is taken up. Not everything sort of, feeds the demand from autonomous sources. You still have quite a lot of them being catered for by the CBN. So overall, I think it's the CBN.
Now, but as far as addressing how much FX comes into the country, how do we pinpoint that?
So to be very honest, in terms of, if you look at FX Nigeria, there are three factors you consider. The first would be FPI, the second would be remittance, and then the third would be CBN intervention. Those are like the three major, source of dollar to the economy. If we want to increase supply, I sincerely and honestly think that there are strategies along each of these routes that you have to take. For instance, for FPIs, you have to sort of improve the whole FX structure, because the main reason why foreign portfolio investors will not come into the country is because of the fact that we have quite a complicated FX structure. For remittances, it is important to put out incentives. If they don't have incentive, for instance, the transaction cost of sending dollar from the US to Nigeria, if that transaction cost is not as low as possible, I mean, if foreigner would have no incentive to bring in money. And then for the CBN, for them to intervene more, it means they must get more dollars. And that is where the whole idea of the government diversifying, ensuring that they're getting more dollar to flow into the CBN, that's where all of that comes in. So I think that in terms of, increasing FX supply, those should be the three routes to look at.
Can that be addressed in the long or short term?
Well,
sounds long term. It sounds like a long term matter. What do you think?
So I think that the first two sources, that's the part of FPIs and the part of remittances. Short-term solutions can be used to address, those ones. But in terms of diversifying the economy, getting more dollar to come to the CBN, that's more of a long-term thing.
Indeed, and I should actually mention the central bank's Naira for dollar scheme. That's still going on to try to promote remittances. Let's go to China and cocoa. What do you make of it, of China, playing in that space? And should a Ghana or an Ivory Coast be worried?
I can understand their concern. To be very honest, I can understand their concern. But the thing is, if you look at the cocoa markets currently, data from the International Cocoa Organization shows that the market size is about 10 million tons in terms of volume, right? And currently, Ghana and Ivory Coast sort of contribute about 64% of that market size, right? What China did was to, sell a very, very small amount to Belgium. Belgium is not not among the top 5 countries that Ghana sells to. However, it is for Ivory Coast. So I would say that, quite right, it might be okay for Ivory Coast to be skeptical and have some sort of skepticism, right? But I don't think it should be the case for Ghana, albeit because of the size of the market that these two economies contribute. I don't think they should be scared, at least not in the short term. But in the long term, I mean, it's China, right? They can go all out and then just flood the market once they're able to get that capacity to produce cocoa.
Is this a sign that commodity-dependent nations like an Ivory Coast, like a Ghana, like a Nigeria should perhaps look more at finished goods instead of, as far as exports versus the raw material that comes out of the ground?
Yes, I agree with you. I think it's about time that we make that switch, right, to begin to say how can we add, value, how can we add quality to, the raw, agricultural produce that we currently produce, right? Because if you think about it, on the global level, you get more value when you sell a finished product than when you sell, a crude agricultural material. So I think it's about time that they actually make that switch.
Speaking of making the switch, do they have the capacity to do so?
Do they have the capacity?
Yeah.
Well, I'll say not currently. But here's the thing, right? For you to sort of develop that kind of capacity, there are things that you need to do, right? For instance, number one, there's technology transfer, right? There is the part of building skills. And I'll give you a very, very good example. If you look at China currently, one of the things, the Chinese government has done is to put out a lot of their youths to go abroad and study. It's very difficult for you to go to a US, university, for instance, the engineering department and all of that, and you won't find a Chinese there. You definitely find a Chinese there. And most times what happens is the government sponsor, these people to go there, learn, and then come back and then improve on the economy. That is what, African economies need to do, to ensure that, they build that capacity. So it's not impossible, right? But currently we don't have it, but we can sort of.
Over time.
Yeah.
Vaccines. What do you make of the vaccine mandate for government staff that Zimbabwe, saying that we're not forcing you to get to get a vaccine, but you can resign if you don't want to get one. And I guess I could combine it with the World Health Organization also talking about the issue of vaccine hoarding and impact on the economy. But first, let me get your take on Zimbabwe.
So, so the issue is, it's very difficult to strike a balance between you have a freedom of choice and, we have a public health concern. That's where the issue is. So the government is trying to strike a balance. I do think it's a step in the right direction, to be very honest. I think it's a step in the right direction. And I think the government is fair enough to say that, look, we're not forcing you, you can as well take the vaccine. And if you decide not to take the vaccine, it just simply means that we're going to relieve you of employment. I think it's a step in the right direction. And you will recall that, I think this was last week or thereabouts, there was some news filtering in the media that, the Nigerian government is considering that civil servants, all must get vaccinated. I think it's important considering the severity of the pandemic and the fact that, economies are just recovering. So it's a step in the right direction. What
do you make of the World Health Organization? I think we'll put up some stats on, 53% of US population has been vaccinated. EU is about 57%. They're already going to booster shots. In addition, the World Health Organization, they're concerned of those developed nations hoarding vaccines and its implications on, I guess, vaccine inequality between them and developed. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good. So at the very least, just like the WHO, has said, the minimum should be let people get vaccinated, fully vaccinated first, before you go about giving booster shots. But I think the concern for the developed countries is the fact that some of the people who are already fully vaccinated are still vulnerable to the pandemic. They're still vulnerable to sort of some of the new variants that we currently have in town. Albeit, I still believe strongly that some of this excess vaccine that they are using as booster shots should still be brought down to Africa to sort of improve the rate of vaccination within the continent. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, the world is highly integrated. So if Africa is left behind as far as vaccination is concerned, it is still a huge risk to these developed economies. So I think it's very important, that they sort of, push those vaccines down to Africa.
Now, see, thank you for that. This now ties back, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm trying to tie this back to your answer on finished goods capacity for Ghana, Ivory Coast. This is in exporting finished goods. To tie that to vaccine proliferation, if you will, or production for African nations, so that we don't have to have the World Health Organization worrying on the emerging markets' behalf. Is the capacity there to produce those within Is it there? Okay, I'm predicting your answer already. But
honestly, the capacity is not there.
Yeah.
If you look at countries that are big on vaccine production currently, what you see is they had the technology even before the pandemic started, right? They had the infrastructure. It was all there. For Africa, we were just building our own, infrastructures and technologies and all of that, So it's difficult for us. South Africa is about maybe the only country muted, to have the capacity to produce vaccines. Most other economies don't have, and so what African economies would then have to do, just like I said before, is you can transfer technology, right? What it just means is it's going to cost them. So they have to pay heavily to get those technology. And besides getting the technology, it's important that they also get people to use them. So that would mean that, you're sending, some nationals abroad to go learn how to use these things and then bring them down. So yeah, the capacity can be developed over time, but currently we don't have it.
Michael Oguremi, fixed income analyst, also macroeconomist at Chapel Hill. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.